Hello, everyone, and welcome to Radio Вера. Добро пожаловать всем, добро пожаловать на дополнительное шоу Радио Веры. Меня зовут Борис Рейтман. Сегодня мы будем разговаривать с моим коллегой Вахрамом Айвазьяном, который нам расскажет про армянскую Network State, сетевое государство, которое, по его мнению, является востребованным, крайне востребованным, поэтому этим занимается. Но мы будем вести беседу на английском языке, так как Вахрам уехал давно и свободно говорит на английском языке. Поэтому я приглашаю к нам на виртуальную сцену Вахрама. Hello, Vahram. How are you?
Hi, Boris. Good, doing well. How are you doing? It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. You are connecting to us from Munich, but you have lived in many places. Is that right?
Exactly. 7 countries, actually, I lived. I lived in 7 countries. But I'm Armenian. I'm from Armenia. And wherever I live, I'm Armenian.
So I wanted to ask you, is me and you are immigrants and we have lived in many places. Is it the fate of immigrant to never really be home, always like moving from a country to a country? When do you stop?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, actually. I think when you go out of your homeland and then you try to settle down somewhere else, you still feel that it's not your home. But when you go back to your homeland, you still feel that you miss something outside. So you are basically getting into a dichotomy. Like you always search for a better place, and I think it's related. It's related to the circumstances and to the environment. That is why people like me who travel a lot and who try to find, the right place, they also start to search for a better philosophy and socio-political establishment to live in.
So that would be the reason why people leave their home country.
I think number one reason when people leave their country is the social justice problem. I think many people leave their countries not because they do not have money or there is a imminent danger that they are going to get killed. Of course, those are very important factors. But number one thing is the social justice. So basically, you see that you're doing more than your peers and you see that you have more better background and trajectory than they have, but still they have achieved more than you do because of the connections, because of the pitfalls of the system that you live in. That is why many people decide to live, and this applies, by the way, to many post-Soviet currents. I know I lived in the USA, and I have seen a lot of actually scientists from the post-Soviet space who were driving Uber in the USA, and they were claiming that we were respected people during the Soviets, and then after the Soviets, when it collapsed, we became like no one in the society. That's why we decided to live. So I think this is a key factor, and I feel that the society perception needs to be reshuffled.
Well, I think what you alluded to is that if you work hard and you live in a state that doesn't allow to rise because of this, but you rise because of connections, because of bribes or things like that, that's when you don't want to really live in a country. And then it's interesting that many people who started startups and very successful startups, for example, Google itself, are coming from former Soviet Union countries, and they have the freedom in the United States to achieve things, honestly to achieve things, without bribes, but just on merit of their ability, they achieve things. But at the same time, it's I think many people, including you, long for the home country. I heard that some people with Armenian roots, they come to Armenia and they said, I'm shocked. I thought it will be a culture shock. I'm not shocked. I'm shocked that I'm not shocked because I expected to have a culture shock, but I feel perfectly at home and I'm staying. It's interesting. It's interesting that people. I saw several reports like this, and I can also tell you when I go to Israel, uh, you know, there's a general feeling that you're home. You came home, and that's a little bit puzzle for me, right? But why is this a feeling like this? Because I am not generally for like nationalism, right? I think I'm an individual. I should be able to live anywhere. But the language and the traditional food, it all adds together. Would you say that's this case? Why you have a feeling of coming home?
That's perfectly actually that perfectly fits into that ethnic like sense of belonging. Like I mean, when you find yourself in an environment where people speak your language, people share some historical memory. This is very important because I think this DNA and ethnicity and all these things are not about blood, but I think they are more about historical perception, who you associate yourself with, and that is why I mean when you end up yourself in an environment where people at least somehow think the same way or have a similar perception of history and socio-political circumstances as you, that is how you feel home. So basically, home is not just a place or building or whatever. I think it's more of a feeling. I mean, when you end up in an environment where you feel that wow. I mean, in a circle where you feel that this is home, and definitely I also long for that Armenian home environment. But yeah, I mean, when then you face the reality where the reality is harsh. So then you decide to leave the country. You decide, I mean, to kind of find paths in other places. Um, so you kind of end up in a in a dual life, I mean, stage, like you are both an immigrant and you are also, I mean, reminiscing your home country. And there are a lot of actually good poems on this, not only written by Armenians but by many um, writers and many poets, which clearly illustrates it. Why I bring the example of poems, because that clearly reaches not only to people's brains but also people's hearts, so subconscious level. So that's why I mean it kind of raises emotions as well. So definitely, yeah, this is a very sad thing actually, because I still think that many people do not find their homes. They are in perpetual search, and that's a very unfortunate thing. And that also uh, is connected to the identity problem. Most people also. So I do not have that problem because I clearly identify myself as an Armenian. But I know a lot of people who I met throughout my journeys who have these problems as well. And I'll bring one vivid example. When I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, United States, I was I actually got shocked because three teenagers were arrested in the airport, and then I read in the news that these teenagers were kind of, I mean, during the interrogation, the police basically asked, I mean, where are you going? And so these teenagers said that we are going to fight for Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the then ISIS leader. It was 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and the police. So why? And this teenager said because this guy explained to us who we are. This is a very interesting thing. Like I mean, they were in search of identity, who to associate with, and I think many people in the world are facing this type of I mean problem. So that people try to find who they are, and I am absolutely certain that this network state movement, these private cities, pop-up villages, new countries, this also is somehow connected to this problem, because people do not feel home where they live in, and that is why they try to build something new, or to at least get into an environment where they can associate to people they love to be with.
I think maybe before we get to discussing to your particular involvement with the network states idea, let's talk a little bit about, you said you researched the Armenian genocide. Can you tell people about this? Because many people don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, I'm someone who actually was a member of International Association of Genocide Scholars back in 2013, 14. I also studied at the University of Toronto. You're in Canada now. I studied at the University of Toronto, and Zorian Institute joined Genocide and Human Rights University program. And I did research, and I also wrote a scholarly article on genocide. So I'm someone who can bring a bit deeper, understanding of genocide. So basically, I'm not gonna, go very deep into, why it happened.
Actually, there are a lot of times now the word genocide gets thrown around. For example, there's a lot of people saying the Palestinian genocide, which I don't agree with, that this is can be even called a genocide. But maybe you can define what you consider this meaning of the word genocide for our listeners.
Yeah, the Armenian genocide actually took place before Raphael Lemkin coined that word genocide.
Mhm.
And we know who Raphael Lemkin was. A Jewish scholar who actually escaped the Nazis, could escape the Nazis, and after the Second World War, he coined that term, genocide. So the Armenian genocide took place well before it. Like 1915 until 1923. During all this, but 1915 was the peak of the year. So basically, Armenians were one of the biggest minorities, if you put it that way, in the Ottoman Empire, the Western
Yeah.
Armenia, which is in East, Turks call it, Anatolia, Eastern Turkey, or whatever they call it. Yeah, so Armenians were living there, and the biggest issue is that the Armenians, the Greeks, the Christian part of the Ottoman Empire. So those people were kind of more like advanced in education, so they would go to Europe to study. And in 1914, before the genocide, Armenians would possess huge wealth in the Ottoman banks. Like in terms of finances. Like we know that how Hitler blamed the Jews, that you own all wealth or whatever. So the Armenians would also get this. Like a picture on themselves. So the Turks. The Turkish government, the Ottoman government, that time there was no Turkey that time, it was the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman government, which was ruled by the Young Turks who came to power in 1908. So these people would basically try to do the social gardening, because they had that pan-Turkist ideology that we need kind of to connect all Turkish nations together. And if you look at the map, it would go until towards China. Like starting from Turkey, from the Balkans, Turkey to because these stans in Asia, like we know this Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. These stans also have huge number of Turkish population, Turkic population there. So basically, that was their dream, and Armenians were a hindrance to it. So that's why they decided to kind of annihilate the Armenians from there. So that's the intention. But I'm not gonna get very deep into it, because there was a foreign interference. Foreign help. How the others helped to organize it and everything. But that was the like the philosophical summary of it. And of course, 1.5 million Armenians were wiped out, and those who could escape also just died on their way. Um, to the desert. We know many Armenians were forced to the desert, to Syria, there El Zor, the city is called. But in to sum it up, is that the entire nation was wiped out from its own homeland. And if you look at the map, it was look at the historical maps and archives. Armenia, historical Armenia, was 300,000 square kilometers, and nowadays Armenia is just 30,000 square kilometers. So it's like, I mean, 1/10 of the territories. So basically, the major part of it was wiped out, and they didn't just kill the nation there, but also the young Turk government. They also destroyed the monuments, like cultural monuments, schools, churches. This is very important because this is what the Azerbaijan is continuing now in Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh. I mean, the same way. Like, I mean, they destroy like traces, historical traces. So this is that's why I always say that Azerbaijan is the continuation of the Armenian genocide. So they kind of try to continue what they did. So
Okay,
basically,
maybe you can explain this, because it's, for me, as someone who is new to this whole topic, I'm a little puzzled. How did it happen that you have an exclave of Armenia? I mean, Armenia claims this is an exclave, which is, in the heart of Azerbaijani territory. What's the history of this? Was this once one big land that was Armenian?
well, yeah. I mean, if you do a bit of research, you will see that Artsakh in Armenia, or Nagorno-Karabakh in Russian. So it has always been an Armenian land, and if you see, Azerbaijan is a very recent state. I mean, it was born in 1980. So before that, you hardly find Azerbaijan. I mean,
Mhm.
after the collapse of the Tsarist Russia, so
Yeah.
we got the new states in the Caucasus, and we had Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. So basically, Nagorno-Karabakh has always been predominantly populated by the Armenians, because it was, by the way, one of the 15 states of Armenian Kingdom. Like, we had 15 states, like United States have 50,
Yeah.
50 states now, right? I
Yeah.
mean, 51. So we had 15
Mhm.
states, provinces, if we call it that way. So Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh was one of them. I mean, throughout history, I mean, for thousands of years. So basically, in 1921, when the region got Sovietized, Stalin, Joseph Stalin, was the head of the People's Department. I'm trying to remember the concrete name of the office that he was managing, like the
Yeah.
Bureau of the
Doesn't
Soviet
matter.
people, something.
They
Yeah.
just make up names. They just make up
Yes,
names.
yes, yes. So he was the decision maker, basically. So Lenin was the head of the state, but Stalin was
Yeah.
the decision maker regarding those matters. So on July 4, 1921, this bureau decided that Nagorno-Karabakh is, of course, Armenian, and that it should be in Armenian, in Soviet Armenia. But a day later, Stalin unanimously, just alone, decided that no, it should be given to Azerbaijan. Why? Because there is a train connection uh, to Artsakh, to Baku. Sorry. So basically, there is a train connection. So it is, on economic terms, it is better to connect it with Azerbaijan. And of course, some Armenians protested, and you know what happens when you protest against Stalin. And there are a lot of, I mean,
Mhm.
historical facts what happened to
We
those.
can make a pause. We can make a pause. We relate this episode to, the modern world. Is I am against the government dictating how to run economical systems, how to run the economics, which business needs to be where, which railroad needs to be there. It's not their decision. It's not the decision of Stalin. It's not the decision of present governments in the world. They cannot tell where the factory should be located, what should they be producing, where the roads should be to the factories, where the trains should be. This is not their decision, in the sense that the people never granted the government this role. The government with every year becomes more and more statist, and we have a situation like this even now. But unfortunately, we do not learn from history. We
Yes.
have a history of the brutal dictator Stalin, who has relocated, whole groups of people. For example,
For
he
example,
had
Chechen people, yeah.
yes, but I was meaning Crimea. All the people from Crimea were kicked out. The Crimean Tatars.
Yes.
Stalin decided that they have to live somewhere else. Same thing with Jews. The Jews were relocated to Birobidzhan, which is like the far east of the Russian territory. And there's so many people. There is also redistribution of the production. The Ukrainian harvests were redistributed so far from, access by Ukrainians themselves, is that there was a mass hunger and millions of people died
Yeah.
because of this. Uh, and this is just one example that Vahram is giving you, dear listeners, about how some decision, in this case in Soviet Union by Stalin, has created a problem. It sounds like it created the problem, the Nagorno-Karabakh problem that contributed to a lot of death, in the ongoing struggle. Is it correct? Did I come
Sure,
right?
definitely. And if you look at the map, I mean, many conflicts in the Soviet and in the socialist bloc, if you call it that way, like Yugoslavia. So we're born because of this myopic decision making. Like, I mean, they basically decided that this country belongs, this nation belongs to this, these people belong to this nation, these people, and that is why, I mean, we had all this, I mean, problem. And in 1988, Armenians decided that it's time, because Gorbachev came, because this perestroika and everything. So Armenians decided it's time to, I mean, claim like Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Armenia. So let's, I mean, based on the Soviet constitution. So we had a referendum. Everything was according to the law. But then Azerbaijan didn't accept, and there was a war. Then the Soviet collapsed, and then we had war in 1992 until 1994. Armenians won the war, also because of the help of the Armenian diaspora as well. Like, Armenian diaspora engaged, because that was like a patriotic war. Because that is our land. And between 1994, May 12, 1994, we had this Bishkek ceasefire between Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Armenia. Nagorno-Karabakh was a part of that ceasefire agreement. And 1994 until 2020, we had skirmishes in the line of contact. So there was no border. There was line of contact with soldiers standing against each other. And in 2020, Azerbaijan, with the help of Turkey, attacked and of course, I mean, won, staged a victory against Nagorno-Karabakh, and they took it. Russia didn't help Armenia. By the way, Israel also helped a lot Azerbaijan with weapons and everything, and everyone
Yeah.
knows that. So, but anyway, I mean, so what I'm saying is that now there are no Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, because there was a mass exodus of Armenians, like 120,000 people, kind of escaped from Azeri invasion, because it's impossible to live under Azeri rule. I mean, everyone knows, I mean, what happens when Armenians live under Azeri rule, or everyone knows what happens, because we are dealing
I
with a.
don't know actually what happens. Why can't they live in Azerbaijan? What's wrong with that? Why they're not happy there?
Well, I mean, basically, if you are an Armenian, if your surname ends with Yan, I mean, you are an enemy to any Azeri in the world. So I'm kind of now saying something super important, and I confirm it. I hereby confirm it, and I feel responsible for what I'm saying. Um, so basically, if you're an Armenian, you either will be killed by the Azeris, or jailed, or whatever, because we are dealing with a very high level brainwashed society. If you watch Azeri TV, for example, you will see that they talk more about the Armenians than more about them. So this is a super. So basically, if we call it this, Azeri society is based on anti-Armenianism, and I feel very sorry for them, because imagine if Armenia doesn't exist, or Armenian component doesn't exist, their society will collapse, because they were built on an anti-Armenian ideology. And we have a lot of cases of massacres against Armenians, like Maraga massacre, Baku massacre, even Gari Kasparov, the world chess champion, ex-world chess champion. I mean, in his book, clearly describes about what happened in Baku and what happened to his friends who. Who were massacred, right? So basically,
So
till now we
everyone
have, till now we have.
read Gary Kasparov's book. I will.
Uh,
I will.
what do you say, Boris? I couldn't hear.
I recommend everyone to read Gary Kasparov's book because
Oh
now
yeah,
for the I will read it. I
yes,
respect.
definitely. Yeah, he's
I want to see what he has to say.
yeah. But
But
basically, yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is that it's super
by the way,
difficult to
maybe
deal with
somebody
that.
don't know, but Gary Kasparov was the longest chess champion, the previous longest chess champion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Right.
basically, yeah. Well, the as a former chess player, I would say that the longest chess champion in the world was Emanuel Lasker, who was a champion from 1894 to 1921. But Garry Kasparov was a star definitely, and was maybe one of the biggest, if not the biggest, chess player in history.
I didn't know this about you. I didn't know you're a chess player.
Yeah,
Who's your
I was
who's
a
your
actually
favorite
when I was
chess?
young, I was a champion of Armenia among the juniors, and I took
Wow.
part in many international tournaments. But then, when I entered university, I forgot about my chess career. But I
What do you
love
think?
chess.
What do you think of Bobby Fischer?
Well, I think he was a genius. Definitely, he was a genius, and he was. I think the chess world now has to say thanks to Bobby Fischer, because thanks to him, chess players now get paid. Before him, no one got paid. I mean, Bobby Fischer came and said, "So this is a service. We spend energy, time, our health, so you need to pay." And he refused to play in many tournaments where they didn't pay. And basically, he was the one who brought that culture that chess players are also humans and you need to pay. That's it. So that is one of the biggest revolutionary things that he did. He made in chess. And the second thing is that he was a guy who rebelled all governments. I think this was a very interesting thing of him, because when Yugoslavia was under embargo, uh, he played with Boris Spassky in Yugoslavia. Boris Spassky was another chess world champion. Basically, kind of thumbing his nose at the American embargo, and that's why, I mean, he got under investigation, and we know what happened with him. I mean, then he died in Iceland. I mean, his grave is in Iceland now. But but he was definitely a genius, and when you look at his games, he was one of the biggest. I mean, I would single out 3 4 chess players in history. One
Yeah.
is Armenian Tigran Petrosyan, who was the 9th world chess champion. The other is Bobby Fischer. The other is Garry Kasparov, definitely. And I also love Vishy Anand, the Indian guy who still plays Vishwanathan Anand. But anyway, I mean, all this, I mean, is a
And
chess topic. But
what do you think about the current chess player, Magnus Carlsen? How would you evaluate him?
Well, Carlsen is a very interesting guy because he quitted the World Chess Championship, and now the World Chess Champion is Ding Liren, the Chinese guy, who definitely is not number one, according in my opinion. Ding Liren doesn't definitely have the same level as Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen is the strongest, the most powerful chess player now. And Magnus Carlsen is, I can say, is. Is the last chess player of the previous generation who still had this. I'm making a very rough assessment now. Who had that initiative thinking, and who wasn't super dependent on computer, because nowadays chess players are super dependent on computer, and this improvisation in chess is like diminishing, which is a sad reality. I don't like it. I mean, if you
Actually,
Kramnik, I think Kramnik had gave an interview. I mean, the former chess champion Kramnik gave an interview about this, that chess is kind of losing its brightness. I mean, it's kind of
but
becoming
if,
like a computer
what
game.
we consider the chess variant, that it was Fischer who invented the Fischer random, where the pieces are in random position. Would that still be, according to you, still interesting chess? because there is no.
Well, I'm more for the traditional chess because I still see traditional chess that there is still huge, I mean, space to explore because
Mhm.
it's endless. But what Fisher did was super interesting because it helps especially the kids, the young generation, to kind of develop their thinking. I mean, innovative thinking, how to innovate on chessboard, and
Mhm.
also I think it helps in life. I mean, it's not just, I mean, for chess, but in life also. I mean, how to kind of think innovative in an innovative way. And Fisher also invented the timing of chess games. Like, I mean, you
I didn't
play
know that.
1 hour 30 minutes, and then you have additional 2 or 3 seconds. I mean, per move. This
Yeah,
is a Fisher. I mean, timing.
I see. Well, it's very popular now on online because it's all done by the computer. It just adds the time for you, and sometimes you can have 3 seconds on the clock and you can still make 50 moves, and this is amazing.
Yes.
All right. Well, I didn't know this. I didn't plan to go into chess in our interview, but I'm glad we did, and this has happened completely organically. Great. But let's go back to the gist that I wanted to cover with you is your specialization. Besides the Armenian question, you organize these network states symposiums, online symposiums. And I wanted to first ask you, because our listeners do not know what this is. If you make like a small introduction, what is a network state? Why there are so many young minds now interested in this? Some of people with big pockets also. And how is this related to your particular Armenian angle? Go ahead.
Sure. I was talking about Azerbaijan and the war in 2020. It was during the war, 2020, that I was trying to understand what happens to the Armenian diaspora, that the Armenian diaspora doesn't um, get a platform to engage more with Armenia, with the homeland. And that's how, I mean, during the war, I would publish articles in a Canadian Armenian media outlet called Gerhard.org. So basically, there I published about Armenian diaspora connections, how we should kind of foster it, how we should engage Armenian scientists abroad into Armenia. So these type of things. And when we lost the war in November 2020, I decided that it's time to kind of create like we can engage Armenians. And on February 24, 2021, I published the founding article of the Network State. It was called Network State, the New Armenia Vision, like how the Armenian diaspora takes part in Armenia's reshuffling in a positive sense, and how I mean we built a pan-Armenian structure worldwide. I mean, having Armenia as a homeland and getting impulses from Armenia throughout the world, because we have huge, I mean, number of, I mean, Armenians living in the United States, in Russia, in France, in Iran. I mean, so we have people living, I mean, in those countries, and not only there, but we hardly use their resources, especially intellectual resources. So that was the main motivating factor when I created it. So it was a pure Armenian project. But then on my way, where we had these Slack, Trello platforms organized. I mean, weekly meetings in departments, for example, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Agriculture. We organized some projects, like, I mean, small projects, big projects, cultural projects, business projects. We even created a business club. And a lot of foreigners came, like giving lectures, trying to understand how we can foster it. Uh, so on my way, I got to know a lot of non-Armenian projects as well. That's why I decided to run this webinar series, Network State and New Countries, to see, I mean, what people are doing in the sector, in this ecosystem. And I would define this ecosystem in a very clear way. There is a Malta-based network stater, I mean, very active in the field, called Ilya Alexa. So this is his, I mean, definition. Ilya Alexa told me once that there are three currents in the world. Like, one is the governments, nation-state governments, and the elite. The second is multinational corporations, and the third is religious establishments. And those three kind of rule the world. And he says that there are people who don't want to be ruled under these three, I mean, currents and establishments, and these
Wait,
people are the
can you
fourth.
repeat? let me repeat this again because I want to make sure I got it right, and our listeners. The religion, that's one system. What was the other one? You said government?
So one is the religious establishment, the other is governments and elites, like nation state governments and elites,
Yes.
and the other one is the multinational big corporations who also take part
And
in
you think
decision
that
making.
these three, this is the only three possibilities. That's what these people think. These are three possibilities.
And I think, yeah, that and Ilya Alexa actually, he coined this, like this fourth establishment. The fourth establishment are people who do not like these three establishments aforementioned, and they want to build something new. Uh, I clearly agree with Ilya what he says, and I think that the ecosystem is this fourth establishment. People
And
who
Ilya,
want to build.
who is this Ilya? I don't know who is this. Ilya
Ilya,
Alex?
Ilya, Ilya, actually, he took part in one of our webinars. He's a good friend of mine based in Malta. Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken,
Does he speak
he is
Russian?
the founder of Internet Society, which was founded in 2011 or 12. Internet Society or something. Yeah. So that is how he coined this, and how I laughed what he said, and I reiterate, I kind of repeat it, and I think the ecosystem is this fourth establishment. People who build networks in new countries, pop-up villages, intentional communities, private cities. These people who do not like the current establishment, this three establishment that we say, they want to build something new, and this is the fourth establishment. And I see there is a huge potential here. And whether we call it a network state, whether we call it pop-up village or whatever, I am more interested in the current of it. Like, I mean, how people want to create something new, to perceive their freedom in a new way. I mean, they long for freedom, which they do not have under current establishments, in their thinking, in their opinion.
Well,
So,
let's give one example. What do you think people don't have freedom with in the current establishment? Give me one.
oh well, I mean, there are a lot of people who, for example, do not want to pay crazy taxes. This is
Yeah.
one thing. I mean, crazy amount of taxes. I'm in Germany; they have crazy taxes here, for example.
What would be you think something that people would have no problem paying if it was,
Um,
uh, uh, let's say, a tax? Let's be talking about taxes. Sure. So, what would be a reasonable?
could you elaborate more on the question?
Well, I have to pay here from 30 to 50% tax, depending of like how much I make, right? Which I also think this is crazy. In addition, I have property taxes, I have sales taxes, all of which are, I find them absolutely ridiculous. For example, I have to pay for a school where my child doesn't go, or I have to pay for the school where, if I have no children, then my child could never go because I have no children. But suddenly I do have a child and I'm paying for a private school where he does go. And on top of this, I have to pay for the public school. And that's just the property tax, right? Um, so my question is, what do you think would be an acceptable level that people will not consider, an oppression or crazy or whatever?
I think it should be a voluntary tax, maybe. I mean, like people who are mature enough to understand that they still need to finance. I mean, the
Yeah,
apparatus, the
yeah,
machine, so that
yeah.
it functions, so that they don't get gobbled up by the system.
Mhm.
But it's like an equilibrium. I mean, you voluntarily pay something, so you understand that you get security, safety.
Yeah.
You get basic services like, I don't know, you have electricity, which still it can be private. I mean, but still, I mean, you have some regulations that, they keep the rules so that you don't get fires in your home or whatever. Anyway, I
Mhm.
mean, so I still think that this should be the way. So I'm not someone who says that we pay 0% taxes, because it will not work. Because still you need security, safety, and everything that
Correct.
needs to be,
Correct. Yeah.
provided. But that's one thing. I mean, tax is one thing. I mean, there are other things as well. Like, I mean, this. I mean, high level of surveillance. I mean, there is a high level of surveillance.
Mhm.
I was in Singapore in the conference. I mean, I was shocked actually with the level of surveillance in Singapore. It was
Tell
a
us about it
shocking
because
thing. I mean, I remember the Soviet history actually. When I saw Singapore, I remember the Soviet history. So it was like, I mean, authoritarian, clear, I mean, super authoritarian state. And it was really interesting, really.
when I landed in the airport in Australia and I wanted to get a phone, I had to give my passport. You cannot get a SIM card without giving your ID address where you live. You can't buy a SIM card, and they consider it normal. I said, "What's wrong with you people?" And they said, "What? This is a standard procedure." And I said, "Well, in the United States and Canada, we do not need to give an ID." And it was very difficult for this clerk to understand this concept.
Yeah. So that is why, I mean, there are a lot of people who, I know an Armenian guy actually who sails in the seas. I mean, a bit of a strange guy, but he says that he feels ultimate freedom. Of course, I say it. Of course, what is freedom? I mean, you're just in the middle of the ocean, and I think that you are under ocean rule now. So basically, you depend on the ocean. So that's not freedom either. Uh, but anyway, I mean, so what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people try to find ways out of that, like a cage. They consider it a cage, so they want to be out. And by the way, it's super interesting. I mean,
Why
this
don't
freedom.
these people speak publicly about it? Why do these people do things quietly? You know,
That's super interesting, actually. I think that's what actually I always, I mean, try to also during this webinar series that I'm organizing with different people from the ecosystem. I'm trying to kind of address that we need a mature group of people who clearly define, delineate what we want. I mean, this ecosystem, this fourth establishment one, because a lot of people run a lot of projects, different projects, and sometimes you see people repeating the same projects. I mean, in
yeah.
different places, and there is no coordinated action, and I see this as a problem because if there is a coordinated action, then our voice can be heard definitely, and why people do not talk, I mean, loudly, because first of all, I mean, the three establishments kind of control the mass media, definitely. I mean, for example, if you want to publish in a piece like in Washington Post or New York Times, and it will be a big headache to reach that level. I mean, you need, I mean, either you need huge sponsors so that they lobby for the publication, or you have to have good connections there and to continue championing your ideas. I mean, publishing it
Right. But
there.
would you say that it's libertarians and people like young people, or maybe people even younger than us, who do not have a big platform, who are the ones that making these statements, although in a small platform, but they're not afraid to say things like, taxes is theft. I don't think taxes are theft, but let's just say they think this, and they are saying this. But you could never see this statement from a large platform. You cannot go on some TV news, which I don't know, ABC News, NBC News, BBC. No one will say there something like this. This is a faux pas. You
That,
cannot say these things. You can't say taxes are evil. You cannot say this. It's not allowed, right?
Yeah, because the system, I mean, the people within it, I mean, are kind of, it is a circle. They do not want to go out of the circle, or maybe they are afraid of going out of the circle. So big names, if they say it, I mean, either they will lose their money or they will use their position or whatever. So they are afraid of it, or they truly believe that this is true, and the world should continue this way. But the young guys, the libertarian, I mean, fourth establishment people, if we continue calling this way, do not have those platforms. I mean, they do not have a reach to those platforms. That's the problem. That is why if we
And
have a
they are not
coordinated.
afraid. They are not afraid.
No, they do not have a reach. They are not afraid. Definitely, they do not have a reach there, and that is because there are not visionary big guys. I mean, big guys in terms of meritocracy, and also in terms of money. Who would, I mean, support them? There are money guys within the ecosystem, but who maybe do not share their vision. They are just in the ecosystem trying to understand what they can gain from it. That's my understanding still, because I haven't yet seen a strong, true commitment from, or I mean, like money, big money guys who would kind of try to build that ecosystem from scratch. But truly, I mean, like
All right.
build it as a true ecosystem that is functioning.
We only have 15 minutes left to go, so I kind of want to make clear for everyone that we are talking about a network state, which is something like a social network where you can make transactions, you can trade within this social net using some virtual currency, a cryptocurrency, or something like that. And the idea is that when the society becomes big enough, let's say 1 million people virtually, then you will actually look for physical land. You will look for that 30,000 square kilometers that Armenia has now to create a new physical state. That's the idea. That's what you are also interested. But you actually already have the state. You already have Armenia. You don't need to look for land, right?
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, we have Armenia, and that Pan-Armenian Network State idea, I mean, has been kind of engage the diaspora, so to fortify that, and also kind of create a pan-Armenian global infrastructure that would help, so that Armenians would never face genocide again, the Armenian security safety would be guaranteed, and the Armenians also would engage with other nations to solve more global problems.
What
Definitely.
is
So that was
interesting
the vision.
about the Armenian case is that, for example, Jews say, see, we have survived for thousands of years, despite all the persecutions, and that's because we have the Judaism religion, right? Well, I'm an atheist. I hate all religions equally, but Islam more. I hate Islam more because it's explicitly violent now, not theoretically sometimes in the past. Now they want to kill now. If you're an apostate or you go against or criticize their prophet. But in general, my point is that the Jews always prop up the religion as a proof. Look, if it wasn't for the religion, we would not exist. But interesting to me that the Armenians do not have a unique religion. If they do, that's not really widely practiced, right? Because Armenians accepted Christianity a long time ago. They were the first ones who accepted Christianity. So that religion doesn't really differentiate you from anyone else. It doesn't unite you in any way, right? Still, Armenians, you know, identify as a separate cultural group, right? Which is now you were trying to create a network state for Armenians. You were trying to unite Armenians, but you're not using religion to unite them. I think maybe Jews need to learn from this, that you could have Jews without religion, which is the world I want to see, at least.
That's a very interesting intervention that you make, Boris. Actually, in our declaration, it is clearly written that we are non-partisan and non-religious. This is super important because we defined it from the very beginning. Why? Because, well, I mean, Armenians are predominantly Christian and Armenian Apostolic Church believers, and Armenian Church has become a national church. Like, I mean, we are a very Armenian institution as a church. Like, it is 1,700 years old, that institution. But uh, still, Armenians, that Armenian identity, I think, is not coming from the church itself. I mean, I think it is more than that. I mean, it comes from that historical memory. I mean, that we have a church has played a key role. I mean, in preserving language. I mean, because next to the church you have a school, Armenian, where you learn Armenian language or whatever in the Armenian diaspora, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
the church would do all these things. But I think Armenian identity is not 100% linked to the church. I think Armenian identity is deeper than the church and the religion, and that is why I mean Armenians, because church is just 1,700 years old, but Armenians, I mean, at least had some 3,000 years history back before the
Yeah,
Christianity. So,
yeah,
so that before Christianity history and DNA and that historical perception, I think, is the key driving force for them to keeping. And you mentioned about cuisine, like I mean, food, traditional food, language. I mean, how I mean, they like dances, I mean music, so that plays a key role. I mean how they find the glue, I mean that glue to feel that sense of belonging. And definitely and we were talking about the Armenian genocide in the Ottoman Empire. There are a lot of hidden Armenians in Turkey. So and like I mean Armenians and Greeks, by the way, who I mean were Islamized, I mean, or whatever, and who were afraid, who have been afraid until now to talk about their identity. And there are a lot of cases when an old lady dying in her bed says that, you know, I'm Armenian, I'm not a Turkish, and her entire family gets shocked. I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, cases like this. So how come? I mean, we can say that, I mean, this Islam Armenian is Islamized Armenian is not an Armenian. Definitely they are. So they got Islamized without their own will. I mean, so how come we can, I mean, ignore that? So that is why, I mean, religion definitely is not a key driving force here, and identity is more than religion, and it's a long historical perception. You're Jewish, and definitely you understand it. I mean, what means that long history, I mean, long historical perception.
I was born into this, and I can't say I like it. I like United States. I like the country where there is no you're American first, and you're Polish or Jewish or Russian or Ukrainian. You're maybe not even second, maybe 10th. I mean, there's always an issue of language, and I not identify as something like Russian or I like Russian history, but I speak the Russian language. I want my child to speak it perfectly enough to hold an intellectual conversation. And the issue of language does drive a lot because you consume media in that language, you read books in that language, and as the tale of Babylon, once you have many languages, you have division between people. I would want to see a world where this is all secondary, a curiosity, like which language you speak. Maybe it's a curiosity. For example, United States, and now we in this interview we're conversing in English. We're discussing interesting topics, and the issue of language is not a barrier. I can't solve the issue of the intermediate situation that people do relate to each other through the historical background. You identify with the other Armenians. I like the Jewish humor, but I would say that why do we have to limit? Why do I have to limit to the Jewish culture? Why can I also know equally and have equal interest about the Armenian history, even though I have nothing historical in my ancestors to this, but every element of history of the world is yours equally, just as much as I'm interested in the Indian history, because let's say going 5 generations back, I don't know these people. I have no relation to these people. Okay, they're Jews, so what? I don't know these people. They're too far back, and I think clinging to your history is actually what has created this problem. The nationalism. The Turks wanted the Armenians out. What's the principle here? They want all the Turks to live together and no one else, which is ridiculous. Why can't other people live in that country? Why not? So I think nationalism is the reason why this happens. I don't have a solution. I know that Armenians have greatly suffered because of the genocide, just like the Jews. And if it wasn't for this, if, for example, if it wasn't for the anti-Semitism and the pogroms, maybe there would no drive for the Jews to create a country which is a safety haven for the Jews, right? Maybe they'll just happily live in wherever they lived, and they will just remember that they used to live in Palestine 3,000 years ago, but they would not move to try and go against all the forces of nature and political forces to move to Israel. The anti-Semitism has created this problem, this country in a sense, and then I think also the Armenians, because of the banishment from their land where they lived. As you explained, it was 300,000 square meters, now 30,000, and many died in a brutal death, which is a war crime. They feel the pain, and that's what unites them now. But I just hope that in the future we can go past the nationalist, borders and nationalist what is called identity, because I think identity is who you are, not what group you think you're part of, but who you actually are, which makes you different from every other person. That's what identity is supposed to mean, not collective belonging, which would be appropriate term. I think we can move past this. I want to ask you something. There is a person in our chat room who wrote something, I should think maybe in Armenian, which is Ahver Vonses. What that
Oh
means?
yeah, it's in Armenian as brother. How are you? But it.
Right.
But he wrote it. He wrote it in like in Latin. I mean, way like I mean not in Armenian because Armenian letters are different. Definitely.
Is Armenian language, is it just like Hebrew from right to left? Or is it really?
No. It's left to right. It's also it's a Indo-European. It's Indo-European language family, but it is unique. It doesn't have brothers and sisters within that family. Like it's very unique, and it doesn't. You cannot find any other language that is similar to it. Though, if you get, I mean, into, I mean, deep into it, I mean, you find some words that are similar to Sanskrit, the Old Indian, and also to Old Iranian language. So basically, that region. I mean, because that was the region we were
Yeah,
living
I
in.
also want to ask you one question, because Armenia is bordering Iran, and Iran is the big enemy of the civilized world now. Um, what do you know about this, being so close to this border? What was the experience of you or people you know? I know, for example, one Armenian who was born in Iran and he lives here.
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of Iranians and Iranian Armenians living in Canada. By the way, I know a lot of them. Iran actually is the only neighbor of Armenia
Yeah.
that it is a very interesting thing, has never been hostile to Armenia. This is a super interesting thing
Mhm.
because Iran has traditionally been hostile to the Turkish world.
Mhm.
Like we have Turkey and Azerbaijan, right? So that's why Iran has always been, I mean, like closer to Armenia.
Mhm.
And also, there is a huge Armenian, I mean, population in Iran. By the way, Armenian population, who is Armenian Apostolic Church believers, I mean, these people, they are maybe one of the most protected, I mean, people in Iran. So they do not face any problem there. This is super interesting. And also historical connection. I mean, for 5,000 years we have been neighbors. I mean, and we had a lot of wars with each other, by the way, I mean, with Iran. But the thing that with Iran that I must confess here that we have never had like a genocidal problem. We have never had an elimination problem with them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and always been getting. I'm seeing this conflict, unfortunate now that is getting, I mean, out of hands, and I think Armenia will suffer a lot of this because now Armenian government is on European, I mean, like direction. We
Yeah.
want to become an EU member and everything, right? But then you have Iran, and so you have to decide on. I mean, what you're doing. It's a dichotomy. I mean, like you're trying to understand what you're going to do. And Iran,
But
again,
Iran was hold on, but Iran was very different before 1979. It was a different
definitely
time.
a lot of Armenians left Iran after
Ethnic,
the
yeah.
after the
And that's
revolution.
actually what happened to a friend of mine, because I understand that 5 years after this, they decided that they will put the nationality in the passport. So you, before this, nobody knew who you are except you. You are Armenian, or you're, I don't know, something else, or Jew.
Jewish also lived there in
Yes,
Iran.
but once his family realized that in the passport from now on it will say that they are Armenian, that's when they left,
Yeah,
because
but
they did.
again, I'm saying, I mean, with Iran, we have never had problems, especially recently,
I see.
and I feel very unfortunate about this conflict, and I truly hope that it will not get out of hands. And I I would definitely, I mean, advise any Armenian do not speak anything against Iran. It's not that I'm pro-Iranian or whatever, but because the way they behaved towards Armenians, especially during the first Karabakh War. I mean, in 1992, 1994, I mean, they kind of, I mean, especially in the Islamic Conference Organization, they blocked Azeri-Turkish resolutions against Armenia, etc. So basically, this is a thing that we always must remember, and also considering the historical connection that we have with them. I don't consider their government good, but I consider they are people that have historical memory with Armenians.
I understand. All right. Well, our time is at an end. We can take this up, the topic of Iran, in our next conversation, which I don't think this issue will resolve itself by then. For now, I thank you for finding the time to speak with me, for explaining what you're doing, telling a little bit about yourself also. And until next